Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. Our guest today is Starr Corbin. Starr, are you ready to be great today?
Yes, I am.
Starr Corbin is an innovative technology executive and agile product and management expert with a breadth of experience directing organization and technology transformation for both government and commercial enterprises. An ardent advocate of servant leadership, Starr is frequently called upon to write about technology delivery needs and how to expand the technology field for women. In 2019, Starr founded Corbin Solutions, a technology management firm committed to delivering complicated technology products better for clients. An Army veteran, Starr also serves on the Texas Governor's Commission for Women and other various nonprofit boards that are committed to enhancing youth development. Starr holds an MBA from the University of Texas Austin and is working toward a Ph.D. in computer science from Southern Methodist University. She happily resides in the Austin area with a husband, an Austin firefighter with an Army veteran, in addition to the three children. Starr, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
So, Starr, I want to talk about the Texas Women's Commission. Can you talk about how you got involved with that and what's that about?
Sure. I got involved with the Women's Commission actually through another fellow veteran who worked in the governor's office specifically. And when he heard about my background as an Army veteran, also a woman in tech, he had mentioned that there were several different state boards that might be appealing because the governor's office at the time really wanted to have more diversity on state boards, have some gender parity as well. So he encouraged me to take a look at the different boards, and one of them was the Women's Commission. And so I've served on the commission for about 4 years. We are appointed by the governor, and we represent various counties across the state of Texas. So specifically, my area is Williamson County, so just north of Austin. And every 2 years, we serve 2-year terms. So I'm on my second term. And the governor's office and the Texas First Lady, they set the agenda, which are focus areas for us to promote, to look into. And so one of our list of our agenda items are bringing more awareness to the human trafficking issues in our great state, as well as advocating for programs and supporting programs that get more girls and women into STEM, as well as bringing awareness to veterans issues specifically. So when I heard that lineup of an agenda, it was not hard to say yes.
So how does one get nominated? I'm sure this don't just pick up random people off the street. Hey,
Sure.
hey, Starr Corbin, I've never seen you before to come be on the board. Like, how does that work? I mean, you set
Sure.
yourself up to be in the process, right?
So interesting enough, and I didn't even myself, until I was approached, didn't know that there was this large list of state boards that anyone really who's a Texas resident can apply to be a part of. So some of those seats are confirmed by the Texas Ledge. The Women's Commission is appointed by the appointments office in the governor's office. So it really is, it's like many things. You can go online, look up different state boards. There are, about 100 in the state of Texas, but there's one application process, which is nice. So if you go to the governor's website, there's an application that you can fill out and submit. And then based off of the appointment process, that's how you're selected. So I submitted an application and got a call several months later.
So way off the subject, but human trafficking. I think most people in America think human trafficking, that's, Asia, third world countries. But it's actually a pretty, I won't say big deal, but a pretty bad deal here in the US, right?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in the state of Texas, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, when people think of human trafficking in Texas, there's a focus on human trafficking across the state border between obviously Texas and Mexico. But there are human trafficking rings within our cities across the state where human traffickers are targeting high school women high school girls locally in their community to traffic across the state. So this is sadly a problem right in our backyard, not just south of the border or, like you noted, in another country.
And then talk about your work on nonprofit boards for youth development. Is that separate from the Texas commissions, these separate boards you're
It
on?
is, yes, it is. So I'm active in my community, supporting different, whether as a volunteer or as a board member. I'm a volunteer of Girl Start, which really focuses on science and technology programs for our elementary and middle school and high school age girls. I have two daughters myself who have benefited personally from those programs. I'm on the board for the First Cavalry Division Scholarship Foundation, which provides scholarships to high school students. So that's and I'm a board member of that board because I served with the First Cavalry Division in Iraq. So I continue to be very in touch with the division that I was a part of in the Army.
Yeah. I was on for 25 years. I spent 4 years in first cav, by far the best unit I've ever been. Like, it's not even close. The first cav was by far the best in everything.
It
Yeah.
was hands down the best experience for a young officer. Absolutely.
If only the whole army was like that, no one would get out.
Oh yeah, I am such a cab soldier that I joked with my husband that when it's my time to go, bury me with the cab soldiers, the caisson following behind me. So yeah, I'm cab through and through.
So, Star, how long have you been involved in tech?
Gosh, 20 years
20 years?
actually. I'd like to say that tech chose me. I
Mhm.
didn't choose tech. When I enlisted first in the Army Reserves when I was in college, and my path I was an Army medic, and so my path was actually to be a nurse. And I was also on an Army ROTC nursing scholarship. And in my senior year of college, realized I didn't want to be a nurse. I wanted to go into the military. I'm a third generation military service member. So it's just what we do. But I realized that nursing just wasn't for me. Bless the nurses out there. I hold that position in the highest regard. So I went to my battalion commander, excuse me, and said, I don't want to be an Army nurse, but I do want to go in the Army. That's all I wanted to do was just get my commission and go into the Army. What branch can I go into? And so I wrote up a list, like most young people going into the military. When you get your commission, you sort of get a choice of 5, and of course, it's always based off of the Army needs.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the Army said that I would excel in the Signal Corps. And I hadn't even taken a computer class before. But I do like to believe that in most cases, the Army knows best. And ended up doing 5 years in the Signal Corps, which is, for most people that don't know, is the IT branch of the Army. And it literally was hands down the best experience I could have had in my young career. So when I left the military, it was just naturally that I would go into IT in the civilian world, and I haven't left.
So I'm gonna get your take on this. So, and I could be getting this wrong, but I think stats show like females in like elementary, junior high, they're really interested in STEM, right? Like 90% of them.
Mhm.
But that drops down like maybe 10, 15, 20 in high school. I mean, short amount of time, a lot of them just drop off. Why do you think that is?
So yes, you're exactly right. It usually starts in middle school, and I actually have a pretty personal example of that from myself and from I have a daughter. Both of my daughters are in the 7th and 6th grade. My oldest daughter is very interested in technology, and she's in a technology class. And she expressed to me just the other week she's the only girl in her class. And one of the things that frustrates her the most is she's scared to ask questions because she's afraid of looking stupid
Yeah, you hear
in
that a
front
lot.
of the other boys. And for a 13-year-old to hear that from my own daughter when, and that's something that, as women in the tech field, we
And
experience.
you're probably like I trained her better than that.
I feel it,
My daughter should not be saying that.
Exactly.
I've ingrained it into her.
Exactly. And even though my husband and I have had this influence on her, we're aware of the issue. We know of the statistics to see it firsthand, from my 13-year-old. And you can see where it starts from there. And so a lot of it is, I feel like that a lot of girls who go in, especially girls of color, they go in and they don't see a representation of themselves, whether it be through gender, whether it be through ethnicity or race. They don't see a representation of themselves in the class. And so there's a feeling, there's an imposter syndrome. There's a feeling that they don't belong. And so I know that I felt that. I was extremely interested in science and technology when I was in high school. But for me at that young age, those interests weren't encouraged or promoted. I remember coming home and talking to my mother and saying, this math is really difficult. And she's saying, I know I didn't do well in it either. It's okay if you don't do well in it. Just pass. So I think that seed of, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough to know that curriculum. Therefore, I'm not worthy of being a part of that learning path.
Or even a young age, a boy go gets, 5-year-old boy go gets muddy. Oh, he's just a boy. Young girl, 5 years old gets muddy. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Go clean yourself up and put on your princess dress and, make
Exactly.
some
We're
tea.
supposed to be nice and kind and clean and sweet and never rock the boat and demure and polite. And so I think you're hitting the nail on the head that unfortunately goes into a lot as to why the numbers of girls and women still remain low to this day in tech.
So I remember a while ago, I tell the story all the time. I was watching like a webinar or something from Sheryl Sandberg, right? A TEDx talk. And she was talking and she was like, I was at a grocery store somewhere and this lady came to me and said, hey, I was at your webinar, talk like a couple of months ago, a year ago. Oh, well, how do you like it? Actually, I was disappointed. What do you mean you're disappointed? Well, at the end, you said no more questions. All the guys raised their hands. And you kept them calling on them. All females raised, did what you said and kept their hands low. And Cheryl, like, if even I'm doing it, like, what chance do the men have not doing the right thing? Right? I'm Sheryl
Absolutely.
Sandberg talking about lean in, and I'm doing the things that men are doing, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I see it, it is interesting because it's not that, the traits of what those men were doing are bad. That's how they get the answers. That's how that's how you earn the position and the place to be there. It's just not as encouraged. Especially when I was growing up, it wasn't encouraged to do as a young lady, which for me, I think, which is why the military for me was so pivotal into developing the person that I am today, and of course, the kind of woman that I hope my daughters grow up to be, where even if they're the only girl in the class, regardless of what class it is, that they're not going to tolerate not understanding something, that they're going to raise their hand, they're going to ask questions, they're going to work hard to get the answer versus being concerned that they're just not smart enough to be a part of the conversation.
I mean, even like in job search, where that's so if a female gets a job, 90% of the time they don't ask, they just take the money, thank you very much. That's so, a guy can like just do something basic, show up to work on time after 6 months. I need a raise. A female can close like $100 million deal, or I'll be recognized later. Like, how do we get females to start asking and say, hey, like, give me the value I need or deserve?
I think it starts with the management, with leadership. I've as an executive leader myself who has managed, all range of people. I am obviously sensitive, to that very thing, to where I think a lot of it is in how comfortable are you making your team feel when it comes to asking questions, right? Are you, a lot of people, there's extroverts who have no problem going, excuse me, I've got questions about X, Y, and Z. And then there are introverts who need time to process things, who it's not that they're not engaged or they're not asking a question, they're processing it. And then later they're going to ask a question. So a lot of times I think it starts with management having one-on-ones with every member of their team. But I think one of the most powerful questions that you can ask people on your team, especially women, at the end of a conversation, like a one-on-one, is what what can I do for you? A lot of times I think when we do one-on-ones or we manage people, it's I need this, I need this, I need you to do this, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times we don't ask as managers to our teams, well, is there anything that I can do to help make you a success? Or, hey, I noticed that during this discussion, you didn't have any questions. I just want to make sure that there weren't any additional questions you may have had after the fact. So I think as a manager, as a team leader, or as an executive, silence is not always compliance in those cases.
So, now, diversity is a big thing, has been for a while. And I always say, have a diverse team, don't hire 10 white software developers. But, finding and hiring female developers is not the easiest thing, right?
It's
First of all,
not
there's very
easy.
few of them.
Sure.
And first of all, like a startup, you can't afford to pay them, So how do you how does that go? When you how do you find for female developers and all that kind of stuff?
I think, and this is, you've touched upon a very, this is a lifelong passion of mine to combat. I do think that a lot of times recruiters seek the lowest hanging fruit, meaning they seek the people who are the easiest people to find for those positions, which are mostly white men. And in a previous company that I worked in where I was an executive, I was hiring and we needed to hire quickly and build out a team of software engineers and developers and testers. And like you noted, especially in the Austin area, when you're competing with Facebook and Google, and those guys and gals are very difficult to find. And the recruiter, I remember being very specific that I was going to approach hiring utilizing the Rooney Rule. And the Rooney Rule is actually started in the NFL, where, I wasn't going to make a decision on a candidate unless I had felt that I had a diversified list of qualified candidates to make a judgment from. So if all of the applications that the recruiter sent me had one type of candidate, I was not going to make a decision until I had women, et cetera, on to review and examine. And I remember the recruiter specifically said, well, you're looking for an IT unicorn star. That panel of diversity just does not exist in this market. And so I really started to question his recruiting practices. I said, well, where are you going? Oh, you're going to LinkedIn. I can go to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to Indeed. I can go into Indeed for a tenth of the cost that I'm paying you to search for candidates on Indeed. I really also questioned our HR team's recruiting practices in the sense of where are they going? They were going to UT. They were going to A&M. They were going to
Where everyone else is
Google.
going.
Yeah, Google conferences that cost $1,000 for a ticket, right? Nobody was going to historically Black colleges.
Yeah, if I was in Texas, I would be going to Prairie View, Texas Southern,
Absolutely.
Texas Women's
We
University,
have Huston-Tilliston
right here. Yeah.
in Austin. We've got Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Our Lady of Lake. We've got Prairie View A&M, not that far. And so a lot of times when recruiters say, well, that's just not possible. Well, you really have to question, well, where are you looking?
Yeah, to me, that's code. They're lazy.
It absolutely. And so, they're looking to turn around a position fast. So sure, naturally, but these recruiters sometimes are charging companies $5,000, $10,000.
Lots of money
to
Lots
find
of money.
these people, and they're going to go for the easiest people. So I think a lot of it is and I think the other problem is companies wait for the candidates to come to them. They wait for the diversity to come to them. You have to go. You want diversity, you need to go where the diversity is. You need to go to local meetups. You need to go to, historically Black colleges. You need to go to universities that don't get all the prime attention because they're not in the top 10, in US news for computer science, et cetera. So I'd be hard pressed for someone to really tell me that the talent isn't out there. You just have to know where to find it.
I agree. So Starr, what is Agile project management?
So Agile project management is a method of what I like to call iterative delivery. So in the golden days of project management, we had practices known as waterfall. And you see this common a lot, especially with really large multi-million-dollar projects, and where you have a 1 month or 2 month long requirements gathering session. Okay, now we've got 100% of the requirements for the project. We're going to go into 1 or 2 months of design. And so by the time you come out of this multi-million-dollar project, it could be 1 to 2 years down the road. And so much has changed because there's been such upfront planning and requirements gathering that money is wasted, and that usually what is delivered is no longer what the customer wants. So there, through the Agile Manifesto, about 20 years ago, there was this concept, and it really started in the software development world, of iterative delivery, that you go to market with something that you feel is good enough. So you, instead of spending 2 months in a requirements gathering process or an 18-month long project, you break up the work into iterative delivery that ultimately can tie to immediate business value.
And so you're
for a
talking about
company.
sprints.
Yes, absolutely. So there, some of the terminology and the way of executing agile product and project management can be in the form of sprint cycles. You hear Kanban, you'll hear continuous improvement, continuous delivery, but it's this idea that if you hire me to deliver on something, I'm going to focus on sort of a minimal viable product, a pilot, so that you get real tangible results as soon as possible, so that you can make a decision on, well, do I continue going to the next iteration, or do we pivot immediately to something else? And that ultimately saves you just a ton of money up front, because you're trying to get something as soon as possible into the customer's hands.
Starr, what is your definition of tech?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. It's such a broad definition. I think when people think of tech, the word tech, I know especially here in Austin, you think of startups. You think of products or capabilities that have artificial intelligence and machine learning and or 5G, the latest and cutting edge. That's what, I think tech, the word tech has a youthful connotation to it as well. It was funny. I was talking to a startup founder, and I was saying IT, or was saying technology, and he says, "I just need to interrupt you, Starr." Is my favorite. I just need to interrupt you and say that the word is tech. If you come out here to Silicon Valley or in the Austin startup circles and you start talking IT, you say technology, that's a very old school idea of tech. You need to use the word tech. So it's interesting that you asked that question, because I think tech doesn't just have a youthful connotation. It's, if it has wires or Bluetooth capability and there's a processor behind it, it's tech.
So Starr, you mentioned like AI, VR, 5G, of all the quote unquote new tech coming out, what excites you the most?
Machine learning, absolutely. It's a personal project of mine, in the sense that I've gone back to school to do more in-depth study in the computer science field, and my personal focus is machine learning, especially when you look at prediction capability, the machine learning sciences for the social good. When you talk about being able, for example, to predict risk or spread of COVID-19, for example. So I think what excites me the most is the artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities for the social good, and how this can be applied for the social good.
Starr, quickly, let's talk about the disconnect between what I call non-tech founders and tech people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a non-tech founder myself would tell a tech person, hey, I need this done. And in my mind, it get done, quickly, right?
Yeah.
And then the tech founder, or the tech person, like, well, no, it can be done easily. A real example, like I think if you told a normal person, go open this door over here, hey, Jason, go open the door. I'm gonna go open the door, right? A tech person, I say, hey, stand straight, turn to the left 90-degree angle,
Yeah.
take your hand out, take 2 steps forward, put your hand forward, turn the doorknob 10 degrees counterclockwise,
Mm-hmm.
push with, X amount of force, right? And, most people don't get that, right? Most people don't communicate that, right? So how do you solve that disconnect?
I think it's interesting. Yeah, the tech mind is definitely a program mind, where you're thinking of all of the myriad of different ways to execute or solve a problem. And sometimes, I mean, my husband will be the first to tell you that he tells me often, Starr, I just want to know the time, not how to build the watch. Right.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, that's the trap that a lot of us in technology that we do fall into. And I like to say that a large part of what I do is there's a lot of what customers want. My goal is to first deliver to them what they need. And so I do think that, that's a large part of where my business and my consulting services come in, is I have the privilege of knowing and speaking geek, but I also understand how to translate that to a client, to a customer, into, some type of analogy or metaphor that they can easily understand. So, if something is, taking a long time to deliver or develop, or something seems easy, uh, you know, one of the gifts I like to say that I've worked hard to achieve is being able to translate level of effort and difficulty into more layman's terms, because that definitely is a gap that we we have
Yeah,
in
I
the
definitely
tech
think,
world.
yeah, there's a lot of non-tech founders need to do a better job understanding, but I think a lot of tech people need to do a better job too of translating, like, okay,
Absolutely.
I understand this geek conversation, but maybe like translate or something. I think don't do a good job at either.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times too, you hear of all of the new technologies that are out today: artificial intelligence, machine learning. That's the hot topics. A few years ago, it was blockchain. So what I think a lot of, business leaders say is, it's the mantra of innovate or die. And nowadays, whether you're a furniture company, whether you're an HR company, at the end of the day, you're going to be a tech company, and that's just the sad reality of
Yeah, yeah. When
things,
people
right?
say like this company not a tech company, how's that possible? There's no way everyone's a tech company, right?
Yeah,
Everyone's
absolutely.
a tech company, everyone's a media company
Yeah,
now, right?
whether it's in your marketing, whether it's the data analytics, where you're trying to understand your customer base, where you're trying to better understand how to promote or build or sell your products. There's going to be, at this stage, the opportunities are endless for any type of company. But I do think that there's a disconnect with some business leaders where they hear the latest tech, they're worried that they're behind the curve. They know they have this problem, right? Like they're trying to gain actionable insight into this problem so that they can pivot or make better decisions. They try to fit the problem into the tech versus the tech into the problem. And so that is where you see where there's a lot of investment made in technology, and there's just no delivery on the results, because the tech people are saying, yeah, I can absolutely build that, and it's going to cost X amount, instead of really going, I don't know if this is what you need
Yeah, I've never
right
seen a tech
now.
person yet who said no, I can't
No,
build that.
no,
Even they have
not
no
at all.
clue, had no about the
No,
technology. No, I've never seen one say, I can't build it.
yeah, no, yeah. Or, and I've seen it rarely myself. It's, oh yeah, we can, it's the over promise and under deliver versus really being a partner. And I think that is our, ethical responsibility, especially when you're delivering projects for the government. That's taxpayers' dollars. And I have seen, and it was a large part of why I started my own business, was I have just seen a gross neglect on, really what does the customer need versus, oh, this is what you want, I'm going to deliver it, I'm going to deliver it, and just keep charging up the project amount, because you're trying to please the customer and ultimately make money, versus really focusing on what are they, is what they're really asking for, what they need, and are there other viable, cheaper alternatives that will meet what they're looking for.
And usually I've learned in tech, cheaper is not always better, right? I mean,
Correct. That is also true. It's
do
like a
you want to
tattoo.
pay someone like, three developers, like we'll say $30 an hour, or do you want to pay one developer $200 an hour?
Absolutely. Sometimes cheap tech can be like a cheap tattoo,
Yeah.
right? It sounds
Yeah.
really good in
I like that
theory,
analogy too. Yeah.
but the result's not always going to be what you're looking for.
Yeah. So any recommendations on people who want to bring on a software developer, they should be looking for, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and especially in, I think people who are, not well versed in tech, and they're looking to build a website. And a lot of times, they'll go to a group that is just all they do, is they build websites. And, it's a 20, 50, 100K spend that, most small businesses, not startups who are backed by venture capital and got a lot of money to throw away, but legitimate small businesses who are bootstrapping, you do see that a lot. It's like, well, I need to hire a web developer or I need to hire a software developer versus really looking at what they're trying to achieve holistically. You might need a website, but nowadays there's a lot of marketing companies that cater to small businesses that provide a website for a third of the
Yeah,
cost.
or maybe all you need is a simple landing page.
Absolutely. And, they're not looking to deliver the most expensive website to you because that's all that they do is build websites. They're looking at, what you're trying holistically to achieve with websites. So a lot of times my advice to small companies is outsource. First of all, don't try to take that on entirely yourself. Like honestly, if you're looking for a basic web page which provides information, there are a ton of different services that can offer you. Like if you're going to have a static web page that's just going to have your company information and that's all you need, go to WordPress, go to Wix, right? You can build that absolutely yourself, and it'll cost you $120 a year. But if you are looking for more brand awareness, more dynamic, polished web page, you certainly don't want to become a developer yourself. That's where it is much more fiscally responsible to outsource those types of things. Because at the end of the day, probably one of the best pieces of advice that I had gotten from a venture capitalist actually was your time is money. And if you are not a software developer, you should not be spending your time doing software development. You need to outsource that. Your time needs to be spent making money for your business. That's the goal. And so, but a lot of people are worried about outsourcing that because there's a cost to that. And there absolutely is. And so, but there's also a cost to your time. If you're building a website, you're not out there promoting your business. You're not out there meeting with clients. So what I always say is outsource. There are a lot of companies out there that cater to small businesses that have marketing plans that provide basic website or very nice website services for a smaller premium versus I need a software developer. You really, really need to look hard as to why you need to hire someone on your team to do software development. So they're only going to be able to do one thing versus outsourcing to a group that can provide you a much larger capability at a smaller price.
So, Starr, let's talk about your own entrepreneurial journey. How did that get started?
I am the absolutely last person that you would have ever thought that would become an entrepreneur. I have no tolerance for risk, which is sort of hypocritical considering that now I lead a small business. It really started when I went to business school. And I like to say when you go to business school, the things that you're taught is really how to manage and run someone else's company, not necessarily how to start your own company. But I did take one class that it was called New Venture Creation, really how to start your own small business. And that class and the people that I was in class with, which is a phenomenal group of people, really sort of unveiled the what I thought was impossible and the mystery. It took out the mystique to where I really started to say, I think I can do that. And so that first planted the seed. And then after business school, I got, the dream job that everybody hopes that they'll achieve by going to business school. And that dream job lasted 2 years where unfortunately I was laid off and I wasn't expecting it either. So I remember, as my husband likes to say, when you're dealt a blow, you've got 24 hours to feel sorry for yourself, to really just fall apart. And then when you wake up the next day, you need to be hitting the ground running and hustling. And so I really saw it for the opportunity that it was, that in reality, I was very unhappy in the role. I was never home. I was working 100-hour weeks. I remember being on a call during my daughter's birthday. She was blowing out the candles and I was on a work call. So I woke up and just saw the blessing that it was and said, I think I can go out on my own. And sometimes when there aren't jobs out there, you got to go make your job.
Yeah.
And so that's just how I looked at it. And when I really, thought about, well, what is it that I feel based off of my, at the time, almost 20-year experience in IT, what do I feel that people need the most? And what I realized that I've spent a lot of my tech career doing is holding vendors accountable to promised delivery, project management, program management, really being the voice of the customer versus, letting the customer drive what they need versus letting the vendor drive what they need. And when I started to talk to my inner circle, that really hit a nerve. So what I like to say is that everybody's got a bad story about IT. Like nobody says, I got this great story about IT and this happened and man, it was just
Like
such a
you
great
put IT,
experience.
the dentist, the same
Yeah,
category,
they
right?
are the same. They're absolutely the same because there's, it's like it can be like rocket science. You are literally putting your trust and money into a vendor that is supposed to take your group, your team to the next level.
And I usually get a solution for IT person. You always think to yourself, is this best solution for my company? Is this best solution for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's both. And so, so my journey into entrepreneurship was accidental, but it was also purposeful in that, I made a decision of um, what kind of company do I want? If I'm going to work 100 hours, I'm a workaholic. So if I'm going to work 100 hours a week, if I'm going to make a conscious choice to spend 100 hours a week away from my family, it better be worth it. And I couldn't think of a better way to do that than through my own business, but also from a genuine desire to help people, um, deliver projects better.
So what's something you've learned along your entrepreneurial journey that maybe you weren't expecting? Could be something good, something bad, but something that kind of took you by surprise.
Oh gosh, the importance of marketing. Whether I was in business school or, the initial stages of my entrepreneurship journey, I really underestimated the value of brand and marketing. I really thought that that was just something that I could, I'm in tech, I can go build a website and I did. I can go build a business card, but there's just something about having polish and to your brand, to your message. And that honestly, when I finally outsourced my marketing, and it was really refreshing to get a third person's viewpoint of my business and, and remove the bias that I had about what made my business great, about the kind of customers and clients that I was looking for. So I would have never have thought that, almost 2 years ago when I started this business, that I would be investing in what I'm investing now in marketing.
So you're
That was a
saying
big
build it and
surprise.
they will come only works in the movies, right?
It really does. It really, really does. I mean, you've got to really hit the pavement on brand awareness. And, the reality is that marketing can help do that. You don't need to go and spend 20, 50, 100K to do that when you're initially starting out. I mean, but there is a small upfront investment that will pay off in the long run.
So talk about your company in more detail, like how it came about, what do you do, what's your vision for your company?
Whoops, oh goodness. So my, the overall vision that I have for the company, well, I should say our overall mission is to make delivering technology projects better for our customer. To ensure that the technology that they are investing so much time in ultimately provides the business value that they're looking for and is worth the cost that they're paying. Whether you're a small business, whether you're a Fortune 500 company, that's our primary mission. The second part of that is to be a place that, to be a diversified workforce and to be a home for military veterans who are looking to take the quite frankly, the program and project management skills that they learned with boots on the ground to be able to have a home. My goal is that over the course of the next 3 years, we'll have that our workforce will be 50% or more military veterans. It is very upsetting to me that the skills that military veterans have, whether they did 5 years, whether they retired, is undervalued. And my goal, because coming out of the military, I experienced that myself. It was very difficult for me to find a job. And I was in the tech branch of the Army, but there continues what I believe to be an undervaluing of the military experience. And so my vision, my goal for our company is to be a place that employs military veterans first and foremost.
Starr, so two-part question. Part one, what's your target demographic? Part two, is that your actual customer so far?
My target demographic in terms of customer base is CEOs or CTOs, CIOs who are looking to enhance their product or capability through digital innovation.
Does the size of the company matter?
The size of the company does not matter. A bulk of our clients, though, have been large enterprise businesses. So we were very fortunate in the first year that, I would say about 85% of our clients were large publicly traded companies. And we are pivoting also into the state and federal government space. But at the same time, we do provide consulting services to small to medium-sized businesses in the areas of contract management and vendor management. So really, I would say that the target customer base that I sent out to really cater to remains our, for the most part, is our existing customer base for sure.
Yes. And you're based in Austin, but I'm
Yes.
guessing you're nationwide.
We are. I've worked in Virginia. We have the capability absolutely to go nationwide. Our initial expansion has been in the Austin and San Antonio area.
And how many people do you have in your team?
We currently have 5 people, but I like to say for the longest time I've been a solopreneur.
And then how do you go about getting your customers? Are you talking about marketing, or is it word of mouth, a strong marketing
A lot of it
plan?
is word of mouth. I mean, the first year, I was just informing, friends through my network on LinkedIn. And that's when I started to get calls. So I was very fortunate that I have, over the past 20 years, I have a fantastic network. And so, but now, the biggest push is to get business in areas where I don't have a network or a personal or professional connection. So that's where marketing has significantly helped us out in that area. Again, if we are pitching to these larger companies, I want them to be able to go to our website and to see, and it is about that polish, it is about that look, that Corbin Solutions has the capability to.
You can handle the big company.
To handle, absolutely. Whether it's a federal agency, whether it's a state agency, or whether it's a commercial company, at the end of the day, your website, I believe, is your virtual business card. And so that's where, I would say that in a few weeks, we're going to be unveiling a whole new website and everything.
So talk about this challenge. I mean, the bigger the company, the longer the sales process, right?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? You might, quote unquote, close the deal today, but you might not get the money for like 6 months from now. How do you handle that?
That's cash flow was first and foremost when I started out, and it has really saved us, especially through the COVID pandemic. In the first year, I spent money as if that money wasn't going to be there the next day. So being really conscientious about how we bring on people. At this stage in our company, it's 1099 really, because of just the, you want to make sure that, especially as we go into government contracts, that I have longevity longer than a 3 to 6 month long effort to, have a long-term employee. And so for us, we have to have a diversified client pool, meaning, when you start looking into the state and the federal government for clients, that's a marathon, not a sprint. I can engage a commercial client today and we can have a statement of work in a week, a contract already done, and I can have someone working on that effort a few days after that contract is signed. With the government, it is I could submit a response to a request for proposal. I may not hear about it for a few weeks to a month. There is just that longer waiting period. So for us, managing that is really looking at cash flow, but also having a diversified client pool. We have, between commercial and federal and state so that we can weather whatever storm that hits.
So has this ever happened? Two situations. One situation, you put in like two request proposals, two different things. You both say no, right? So you're having business.
Yeah,
Other end, you put in two and they both say yes. You're like, how am I going to do both of them? Right? I don't have the
absolutely.
resource to do both of them. Like, how do you handle that?
The partnerships has been really integral. So as part, so Corbin Solutions is in the veterans and residents cohort 2020B, I want to say, through Bunker Labs. And one of the things that made me apply to that program was specifically to develop partnerships. I knew that we wanted to go after state and federal government contracts. I knew that in order to, if we won a contract, we knew we'd have to scale really fast if we won it. And so the best way to do that when you're a small business is through partnerships, especially when you're going with the state and federal government where you don't have prior, experience in the government realm. We have plenty of prior experience in the commercial realm, but when you're going after contracts, the federal government, it's like a chicken or the egg thing. They're really looking for that prior experience at the government level. So for us, it was the decision to, for example, we entered recently into a mentor and protege partnership with a well-established health IT company that's been doing business with the federal government for the past 10 years. So it's first deciding I can't do this on my own, right? Finding a community that you can network it with, and then through that community, hopefully finding partners that can help you scale your business.
Starr, how do you go about qualifying your potential customers?
That's a great question. I really, I always say that, I always look into initial discussions, really trying to best understand what it is that they're looking for. And I always start with a discovery session. It's funny. I had one client who was with a insurance company, a publicly traded insurance company. They were actually an international insurance company. And I happened to know a member of their board who recommended that I assist them with their Agile transformation. And the first thing the CEO said when we were sitting down having a conversation like we are now was, "You're only here because the board member recommended you. We will do business together if I like you." So I thought that was really interesting. But it does hit in that a lot of it is just the initial relationship building. And then it goes into the capability. And then it really, I hone in on, is what you're looking for something myself or through a partner I can ultimately provide. And, but also too, I think one of the things that when you are really vetting a customer, if it's a right fit, if you can provide the services, and I think this is key for small business owners, is sometimes we get in just one focus. Like I can only do one thing. And so I'm seeking a customer that is looking for that one thing. And when you're starting out, while it is really important to have your pitch, we can provide this, but it's also very important, especially when you're starting out, you're trying to gain traction and credibility, to really look, well, what else can I provide this customer? They're looking for X. Can I also provide Z based off of existing partnerships or capabilities that we have? So a lot of times I'm really looking, was the customer looking for X, Y, and Z that I know that I can provide, or are they looking for A and B that's completely outside of the scope of services that we can provide?
Starr, how do you make sure you bring on the right talent to your team? Like, no, everyone can do a portfolio, put some of their resume. Like, how do you qualify they're actually who they are and they have the skills to make
Yeah.
your team better?
My recommendation really is, outside of the interviewing process and all of those types of things, everybody presents their best self
Yeah.
in the interview
Their
process.
best self.
Yeah, their best self. It is rare that I am ever at my
you will
best
never
self.
see again.
Yeah, exactly. And I have been in the unfortunate position of, of firing people, of letting people go who just did not work out. So I think when you're starting off, it's always good to have a probationary period. I'm also a firm believer, and I learned this in the military. When I was in the Army, I never had a soldier, nor did I ever go into a new position where I wasn't given an initial counseling by either I did it or, my supervisor did it, where it was like, hey, Starr, here's your job, here's your role, here's what I'm going to evaluate you on. Right. And really that should be a copy of the job description. So I strongly believe that when you hire someone, there should be first a probationary period, whether it be 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, whatever works for you. But then I also firmly believe that within their first week of being hired, you need to have initial counseling. Sounds really bad, but an initial job review where you are reviewing exactly what you're expecting from them and how you will be evaluating them, and that you're not going to evaluate them at the end of the probationary period. If it's 6 months, for example, you really need to be doing one-on-ones, if not weekly, no more, no less than once a month, where you're providing them feedback on what's going well. It's almost like the AAR that we did in the military. Areas that are going well, areas that can be improvement, and then what they need from you to be a success. And I really think that, by having that, by showing that investment in the employee, you're really going to gauge pretty quickly whether or not that person is a right fit, but then also provide them an opportunity to become the right fit for your company.
So Starr, have you done take us on for a company and you walked in, you're like, whoa, this is so bad. Even I can't fix this.
Yes, I unfortunately have. And a lot of it is really people problems. It's poor leadership. It's poor management. It's a lot of it, most of the time, if the team is performing poorly, most of the time that's not because it's a bad team. It's because there's a bad leader. There's little to no direction. And a lot of times, in lieu of, I used to like to say in the military, in lieu of direction, you're going to take action. May not be the best action, but you're gonna react.
You got to move forward, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You might be moving from the wrong direction, but at least you're moving.
Absolutely. And so, usually, most of the time, as I like to say, technology, there's always some solution. It's like math. It's a 1 or a 0, right? It either can be done or it can't be done. If it can't be done, maybe there's a different way to do it, right? There's always a solution to tech or to a project, whether that's to continue, to pivot, or to quit, right? But people, that's not black and white. And so a lot of times, if you've got a poor team and you're a manager, rather than always placing the blame on the team, I think as a manager, and this is what I've seen when I've gone into companies where it's like, I don't know if this company can be helped, whether as a consultant or as an executive in a former life, it's really, how are requirements and job roles, and how is that team being supported by management and leadership? And also another reason why I started this company, why I decided to not go back into the corporate world after I was laid off, was I've been out in the military longer than I was in. And hands down, to this day, the best leadership I've ever seen in the tech world has been from the military. I've unfortunately seen more examples of very poor leadership in the civilian world than I ever did in the military. And so part of what drives me and my company is to be the kind of company that I would want to work for, that people that I know and trust would want to work for. Because unfortunately, people who make it into management or the C-level, that's just because they're time and grade, they looked good on a resume. Nobody goes, it's very rare for companies to require management and leadership training before you take on a management or leadership role.
Yeah, and the Army we take for granted, right?
It's required. Yeah, it's required. You don't, to become an NCO, when you're an E5, E6, there are stages
NCO leadership academies that you have to go through when you're an officer and you're going to go become a company commander. You have to go to a course, before you take command that teaches you the tools to become.
Also in the military,
commander.
I didn't want to think about this recently. In the military, I don't care what your rank is, you only get up in front of people at least one time and give a class, some kind of training. You're going to get up and publicly speak in front of people and defend it,
Absolutely.
And most civilians don't get that.
Absolutely.
I don't think.
I mean, the kind of leader that I am, I like to say it's twofold. It's because I've seen firsthand what not to do. And because I had the privilege of working for some of the most amazing leaders when I was in the Army, who, quite frankly, might be a shock to people who aren't with the military, who were the largest proponents of women in technology that I have ever seen. And and it's definitely a culture that I really do miss, that I feel like is
Yeah, I don't
lacking.
think the Army gets enough credit, or military in general does not get enough credit for the diversity and collaboration they get. A lot of people say this 19, what's the guy's name? Gomer Powell mentality in the military,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
dress on yelling, but it's nowhere like that, It's nowhere
It's
like
so
that.
unfortunate. When I tell people this, it always comes with shock, but it's absolutely true. I had more women leaders in the Army than I've ever had in the civilian world. When you look at that, I've been in the civilian world for 15 years. I was in the Army for 10 years. And the entire time that I've been in the civilian world, I've never had a female boss.
Wow.
Like, never. But when I was in the military, I had 3, who were of significant rank that I reported directly to. I had the same number of women bosses that I had male bosses.
Yeah, I think I did. No, I think I did it the same way, but it's pretty even. Yeah.
Yeah, and the diversity as well. But you're absolutely right. The military, even to this day, is seen as the option of last resort, I think, for our young people, which is really unfortunate.
So talk a little bit about Bunker Labs and Veterans in Residence that you're taking part in right now. How do you find out about it, and what's been the benefit?
I found out about it just through my regular veterans circles. It's pretty well known, especially if you're embarking on entrepreneurship. They have a really fantastic media presence. Their marketing is very sound. And as COVID was hitting, I knew immediately we were going to take a massive hit. And because all of our customer base was in the commercial side. And so our customers saw a significant drop in their own revenue. And so, like most small businesses, unfortunately, the work, really took a hit. But what didn't take a hit was our contracts in the government. And so it really was a wake-up call that we needed to do more of a pivot and into the government space. We really needed to diversify our client base. And so when I decided to apply to VIR, the goal was to take our company to the next level, to be able to create partnerships with other companies that were associated with VIR, so that we could, just be a more attractive company and for state and federal contracts. And so VIR has absolutely met those expectations, in the sense that through the cohort, met a partner who is very well established, who is an ambassador with our cohort, developed a mentor and protege, and then also in the cohort met someone else who was just like me, looking to take their work to the next level and expand their work with the federal government. And so now the 3 of us are partners, and there's just no way that I would honestly be able to respond to several of the proposals that we've responded to, because I wouldn't have sort of that larger scope of capability. I would have had a more narrow scope of capability if it was just myself.
Starr, being an entrepreneur, is not easy, it's difficult. Can you talk about how being a veteran, has it helped you or not helped you? And while you answer that, I actually have to get my plug for my bag before my computer goes dead.
Okay, yes. Should I continue on? Or okay. I would not be a successful entrepreneurship today, honestly, if it weren't for my experience in the military. I think that entrepreneurship and the risk
and the reward or lack of reward at times would be very difficult to handle if I had not been in the military. I think what the Army taught me, I mean, I enlisted at 19, was grit and perseverance. And when you and your husband have done back-to-back deployments to the Middle East, a lot of things compared to that don't seem as hard.
That's the one thing, like people will say all the time, entrepreneurship is hard. It's hard. I'll say, well, let me push back a little bit. It's not easy, difficult, but is it as hard as like the stuff you had to do in the military, the decisions you
Yeah.
make? It's not even close. Like I tell people all the time, they get mad. Like if being a startup or entrepreneur is the hardest thing you do in your life, you've had a very blessed life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being a parent is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. Being in the military is hard. I mean, I think a lot of people, what makes entrepreneurship very difficult for people is, you're not always going to have a salary. You're not always going to get paid. There are days that you're just working to keep, the company afloat. And so that's why entrepreneurship is hard, because of the risk, right? And that's why a lot of people think that entrepreneurship is a young man's game, right? I'm middle-aged and I decided to become an entrepreneur. I mean, my sole goal in life was to first, I was going to retire in the military and get my pension and then go have a second career like my father. A tour in Iraq, really everything I wanted to do, I thought I would do in 20 years, I did in 5 when I was active duty. So I was like, okay, I'm good. And my husband and I being dual military, it took a
That's
big,
even harder.
a big toll. Yeah, exactly. He was an infantry officer. And so we were like 2 ships passing in the night. And so, when I got out of the Army, I remember saying, I want the most boring, predictable job. And in 20 years, I want to collect my pension and get my gold watch. And, when you've done military service and you've seen, the things that we see, you're just not satisfied with being bored and collecting the gold watch after 20 years. So, there's something about the military that is so humbling, that our definition of hard, it's a very definition than most people. But I think also too, as veterans, considering the work that we do is risky, from a survival point, but it's also a very stable job, right? You get your health benefits, you retire, you get a pension, you're always going to get paid, so there's a stability in that makes entrepreneurship very scary to go after, because that stability is not always there. But it's not harder than serving a tour in Iraq or
No.
Afghanistan.
And one thing the military does a good job too, and most people don't realize in our military, like, what's the thing, knock down 10, get up 11. The military is good at, knock you down 10 times and help you get up 11 times, right?
Absolutely. If you can look up, you can get up. I mean, that's my mantra.
Yes. So for your company, any plans on expanding it anytime soon, or are you going to stay where you're at right now?
I think we're going to stay where we're at right now. We have a 6 to 12 month plan to really break into the federal government. And so again, like I said, when you're going after government contracts, that's a marathon, not a sprint. And so, but at the same time, you get that one contract, you can go from 0 employees to 25 almost overnight. And so that for me really is our plan in the next year, is to expand our presence in the government. And so on the state side, we're really focusing on the Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio areas, just because that's the areas that we know the most, especially, most of the state agencies are headquartered here in Austin. So, and it's a market that I'm very familiar in, but then also pushing into the federal government. So I think, like a lot of small businesses, due to COVID, we're monitoring our operating expenses and our cash flow, to the detail. So growth, it's a long-term strategy for sure.
So Starr, you talked earlier about working 100-hour, weeks for corporate America. A lot of entrepreneurs take pride. I work 100 hours a week in my startup.
Gosh, yeah.
Some people work like 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. Some people work, 7 days on, 2 days off, all these different things. What do you do?
I really try to have the balance between work and family. I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're never off. You gotta put food on the table. So the hustle is 24/7. But my kids are in middle school and high school. And if, one of the benefits of, again, like I said, being laid off was the awareness of, I put in 100 hours a week outside of a very great paycheck. What did it get me? What was the cost of that? And the cost was health. The cost, I remember the day that I got laid off, it was in the morning. And I remember sitting in my car, reeling from the shock of it, and then going, I can go have lunch with my daughters today at school. And I showed up, and
Did they pass out because they saw you?
They couldn't believe it.
Like, what are you doing here?
That was the first thing my youngest said. What are you doing here? And the oldest said, you haven't had lunch with us in over 2 years. That's really sad that I couldn't even take time out of 2 years, because I was putting all of my energy into a job that didn't, that again provided, absolute stability, I should say in a monetary sense to my family, but instability as well. It would provide more instability than stability. And so when being an entrepreneur, yes, I work just as much. I work on the week. I'm always thinking about the business. Like every day,
Always
I'm hustling,
on, always
be hustling, right? But my kids, especially with COVID, I am home because I can do my work remotely. I am home. My kids see that I am working towards a business that does provide a greater value. I'm home when they get home 9 times out of 10 now, right? I can help them with their homework, which was a luxury that I didn't have because I was traveling before, was coming home after dinner, and so for me, the balance is while I'm working a lot and my children do see that, they can also see the value of, because it's mommy's building her business. She's working hard for herself. And when you've got daughters, that more than words is profound.
Starr, what do you do to make sure you take care of yourself?
Friends. I have a core, so 2 things, I'm a mother always, right? A mother and a wife always. But I've always been a proponent, at the end of the day, the relationship that I have with my husband also takes priority. We've been married 20 years. And that's why I joke, if he and I can survive back-to-back deployments in Iraq with an infant at home, there isn't much we have not seen in 20 years. But he's always reminding me, he's like, hey, honey, can that email wait? Let's just have dinner, and so for me, the taking time to, invest in my kids. But at the end of the day, those kids are going to grow and they're going to leave. And you should want that, right? And then it's just going to be my husband and I. So instead of waiting then, I really consciously focus on investing time in him and really valuing, okay, does this email need to be sent now? Or can it be sent, after the kids are in bed? So the time management piece is really important. And then having friends who are entrepreneurs, having friends who also have nothing to do with your business, and, genuinely setting aside time, right? A lot of people say, well, I don't have the time. Well, if your water heater broke and you had water gushing out all over the place, you're going to find the time.
That becomes priority number one, real fast.
Priority number one. And when you're in entrepreneurship, the beauty of having your own business is you do set the priorities. So instead of your boss, when you're working for another company and that person setting the priorities, there's 2 people that set the priorities in your business, your customers and you, right? And your customers have less of a say than you do at the end of the day. And so I think it really is conscientiously making a choice to find the time.
So Starr, entrepreneurs, you have a lot going on, you know, a lot of different projects, people you got to meet with, you know, your mother, you know, wife, friends, other stuff. How do you prioritize all that? Like, do you have like Google
I
Calendar
do.
you run? Do you
So
wing it?
I do. I practice what I preach. So, you know, I'm a certified Scrum Master, product owner, all that fun Agile certifications. And so I time box my work. And you know, even though I like to say every hour, every minute, I'm hustling. Um, I every morning when I was in the Army, I was an aide to the First Division. I'm sorry, First Cavalry Division Assistant Commander, and I was always having to prioritize work. I had this leader's book that I would create little boxes, and like my whole to-do task was just I was managing his schedule, I was managing our schedule. You had to be organized in that role, and that work has carried on to me even 20 years later, to where if I have a leader's book to this day, it's like a moleskin black notebook. And if you were to look at it, you would see on Sunday night, and I'm not lying, I do this, it drives my husband crazy. Sunday night, I write out a master list for the week of everything that needs to be done. And then Monday morning and every morning of the week, I then have a sticky note next to that where I write out, here are the tasks that I'm going to achieve today. So, and that's Scrum. So I'm practicing Agile principles by time boxing the work, determining what I need to accomplish for that week, and then tracking the progress every day towards checking off everything on that box. But it really, you know, and I never finish that list, you know, and then the next, you know, on Sunday night, I'm pulling stuff that wasn't done and I'm adding it to the list. But then I also say, all right, you know, kids are on the bus at this hour, they get home at this hour. And I consciously, I want to be there for them to help them with homework. And I want to have dinner with the family if I'm not in Austin or if I'm not with a client, if I'm working from home. So I will even block out high priority items that have to get done that day. I'll even go to my calendar and I'll block out, Starr, for this hour, you are going to do this. And it's controlling my schedule to that nth degree is how I'm able to, you know, manage the schedule that I have today.
And so for those who don't have any military background, I'm going to cover what Starr just said. So Starr was Agile General. For those who don't know, only like the top 0.0% of people get picked to be general aides. And I did an HR in the Army, so I kind of know this. 50% of aides go on to become general. So like Starr was the superstar in the military superstar now. I mean, they don't, you know, does don't become general aides, right? The top notch become aides, especially the first cavalry division. So she's a superstar, no doubt.
Well, thank you.
So Starr, can you give us your social media links for you and your company so people can reach out to you?
Sure. So you can follow us on LinkedIn. You can just, you know, search for Corbin Solutions Group. And then our website is www.corbinsolutionsgroup.com.
And for our listeners, we have the links to our social media on the show notes. You can find the show notes at www.cavnessblog.com. And be sure to share this episode with your friends. Starr, we're coming to the end of our talk. Can you give us any advice and wisdom on anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, again, you know, I think as an entrepreneurship, just remembering that you do have control over your schedule. It's not selfish to take some personal me time, and that, you know, at the end of the day, the customers will be there, but the people you love might not always be. So it's important to invest in your personal life just as much as you invest in your business. You are your business.
Starr, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.